New Zealand's leader, Jacinda Ardern, has gained more than her seat at the table. With her stellar politics, progressive beliefs, and record, she began her political career young and has remained steadfast ever since. Her leadership brought New Zealand to the world stage, becoming a political celebrity through her leadership and firm stances on gun control, COVID-19, and diplomatic ability. How does one of the country's youngest politicians lead her country in just a few short years to unheard of heights? How did Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern get to where she is? Welcome to Neapolitan. Today we'll be looking at Jacinda Ardern, the 40th Prime Minister of New Zealand, as well as the leader of the Labour Party. Unanimously ascending to leadership, she was the world's youngest female head of government and the second ever head of government to have given birth while in office. Describing herself as a moderate, a progressive, and a social democrat, she has brought strict gun laws and successfully contained the coronavirus as one of the few Western nations to do so. We're going to dive into where she's from, how she got here, and look at the woman she is today. We'll look at it broken down into 3 unique sections, like Neapolitan Ice Cream, the vanilla, the who, what, where, and when of the folks that changed the world, chocolate, that flavor punch. Controversy and adversity make lives so interesting. And the strawberry, the lasting legacy and lick that all Neapolitan lives come with. If you're interested in other videos like this, or different in-depth looks at essential people throughout history, then make sure you're subscribed to the channel with post notifications on, so you never miss a single one. Without further ado, let's get into it. Vanilla. Born on July 26, 1980, Jacinda Kate Laurel Ardern grew up in Morrinsville in Murupara. She was the daughter of a police officer and a catering assistant, raised in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. She studied at Morrinsville College, serving as the student representative of the school's Board of Trustees. She was in politics young, joining the Labour Party at just 17. She eventually finished her education, graduating from the University of Waikato in 2001 with a degree in politics and public relations. While studying, she also attended a semester abroad in 2001, taking classes at Arizona State University, before working as a researcher in the Prime Minister's office under Helen Clark. She spent some time volunteering and working with workers' rights campaigns in New York City. This was before she worked in London, working as a cabinet officer advisor. She would then be elected in 2008 as president of the International Union of Socialist Youth, which found her spending time in several countries like Jordan, Hungary, Israel, China, and Algeria. Midway through her time, she became a list MP for the Labour Party, continuing to manage both roles for the next 15 months. She served as the youngest MP until 2010, succeeding Darren Hughes before her. In 2017, Ardern was unanimously elected as deputy leader of the Labour Party after Annette King resigned. 5 months later, with an impending election, the leader of Labour, Andrew Little, resigned after receiving historically low opinion polling results. Ardern was elected, unopposed, in his place as leader. During the general election of 2017, Ardern retained her Mount Albert electoral seat by a margin of 15,264 votes. This increased Labour's vote share to 36.89%, while National dropped to just 44.45%, which is the best result for the Labour Party since its loss in 2008. The support for the party rapidly climbed, as she led the party to gain 14 seats in the 2017 general election, with 46 seats to the National Party's 56. Negotiations found a middle ground, as New Zealand first entered a minority coalition government, alongside Labour, with Ardern as Prime Minister. The coalition received confidence and supply from the Green Party. Once named Prime Minister, Ardern named Winston Peters, the New Zealand First Leader, as her Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs. She also gave New Zealand the first 5 posts in her government. She quickly confirmed that she'd be holding ministerial portfolios of national security and intelligence, culture and heritage, and arts and vulnerable children. The position she held as Minister for Vulnerable Children was later changed to the role of Minister of Child Poverty Reduction, as the New Zealand First MP Tracy Martin took on the Minister for Children role. Ardern, upon taking office, claimed her government would focus on being focused, empathetic, and strong. The Governor General swore her in October, which made her the world's youngest female head of government at just 37. This was around when she began her family, giving birth to her daughter Neve in June of 2018, making her the second head of government to give birth while in office. Detractors were quick to point out her positions were very similar to those of Andrew Little, suggesting the sudden increase in Labour Party was due to Ardern's looks and youth. Ardern described herself politically as a social democrat, Republican, progressive, and feminist. She has claimed capitalism is to blame for the extent of child poverty and homelessness in New Zealand. She considers terms like democratic socialist useless for her purposes, but she has described herself as such to the media when prompted. While she wants to increase the intake of refugees, she's called the rates of immigration on infrastructure an issue. On issues like Maori seats, she believes the seats' retention of abolition should be decided not by her, but by Maori. However, she also supports the compulsory study of the Maori language in schools. She's spoken in support of same-sex marriage, voted for its legalization, and became in 2018 the first New Zealand Prime Minister to march in a Pride event. Ardern received favorable coverage from media across international outlets. Many believe the Jacinda mania, or Jacinda effect of her presence, is a factor behind New Zealand gaining global attention and media influence. She attracted a lot of international media attention, contrasting with many other world leaders, becoming a celebrity politician that acted as a foil to the muscular diplomacy of the former US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Sometime into her government, some media claimed the Jacinda mania was waning, as there wasn't enough promised change visible. She was lauded for her leadership following the Christchurch mosque shootings and other hard-fought victories in her early prime ministership. Her empathy, steel, and clarity pushed through even the worst circumstances, showing strength and character even in the face of adversity. Chocolate. Among her other points, Ardern took the role with a promise to halve child poverty in New Zealand within a decade. She announced the start of her flagship Families Package, which gradually increased paid parental leave to a 26-week length and introduced a $60 per week universal payment to low and middle-income families with young children. This also saw increases in the family tax credit, accommodation supplement, orphans benefit, and foster care allowance amounts to a significant amount. They rolled out a school lunches pilot program, extending it to support over 200,000 children in low-decile schools. However, any gains have come under criticism. Despite efforts, critics point out that rising housing costs continue to cripple families. In 2018, Ardern removed Claire Curran, broadcasting minister, from the cabinet after she failed to disclose a meeting outside of parliamentary business with a broadcaster. She remained a minister, which drew further criticism from the opposition, as Curran was not dismissed. Ardern later would accept Curran's resignation. 2019 brought more harsh criticism, as Ardern handled an allegation of sexual assault against a Labour Party staffer. Ardern claimed to have been told the allegation did not involve sexual violence of assault before a report in the spin-off was published. When media questioned her account, one journalist claimed the claim was hard to swallow from Ardern. On March 15, 2019, the Christchurch mosque shooting saw 51 people fatally shot, with 49 more injured between the mosques. Ardern offered her condolences, claiming the shootings were carried out by an extremist, saying it was a well-planned terrorist attack. She would refuse to name the attacker in an address to Parliament after traveling to meet with victims and first responders' families. She said to give them names would give them power, and drew international praise for her response. Ardern announced the intention of her government to crack down on firearm regulation, saying the attack exposed a clear blind spot in the country's gun laws. Parliament quickly passed a law banning most semi-automatic weapons and assault rifles, as well as higher capacity magazines and parts to convert guns into semi-automatic weapons. Ardern met with French President Emmanuel Macron as they co-chaired the 2019 Christchurch Call Summit, aiming to call countries and tech companies together. There was a solid attempt to end social media's ability to organize and promote violent extremism and terrorism. Despite the parties' shared coalition in 2019, Ardern announced that New Zealand first loans would be independently investigated, citing that it would be dangerous to democracy if they allowed political parties to make rules for themselves. This comes after demands and criticism from the National Party to ensure that the donation scandal is investigated appropriately. New Zealand First Foundation was found to have loaned the party tens of thousands of dollars, effectively circumventing the disclosure rules on donations by categorizing them as loans. Ardern believed that it would be inappropriate to handle it as a political entity, citing that a transparent democracy needs independence. Strawberry. The 2020 COVID-19 pandemic brought new challenges to Ardern's government. She announced 14-day isolation for anyone entering the country after March 15th. This was seen as the widest-ranging and toughest border restriction across the world. New Zealand's borders closed to all non-residents and non-citizens on March 19th, moving the country to Alert Level 4 with a nationwide lockdown. While covering the government response, the media praised Ardern's leadership and swift response to the outbreak in New Zealand. She was often cited for her frequent use of interviews, press conferences, and social media as a masterclass for communication in a crisis. In mid-April of 2020, 2 lawsuits were filed at the Auckland High Court against Ardern and government officials claiming the lockdowns infringed on personal freedoms. This prompted the May 2020 collaboration to create a COVID-safe travel zone, allowing residents from Tasmania and New Zealand to travel freely to ease COVID-19 restrictions. Ardern worked with Bill and Melinda Gates to speak up and spread awareness on a collective approach to a COVID-19 vaccine. The government pledged $37 million to help fund a vaccine, including $15 million to CEPI, the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovation, and GAVI, the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization. Following the invasion of Ukraine, Ardern was banned from entering Russia, along with 129 other parliamentarians and senior government officials. This was after the New Zealand Parliament had unanimously condemned and imposed sanctions on Russia in response to the country's invasion of Ukraine. In late June 2022, Ardern attended the NATO's Leaders Summit, making her the first leader of New Zealand to formally address a NATO event. She emphasized during her speech the country's commitment to human rights and peace. Ardern criticized China for challenging international rules and norms in the South Pacific. During the same event, she alleged Russia was conducting a disinformation campaign, targeting New Zealand for its support for Ukraine. The Chinese embassy, in response, defended its engagement in the region of the South Pacific, claiming they're only interested in regional development, not militarization. Ardern spoke with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Though Ardern had been invited to visit Ukraine during her European trade mission, she declined due to scheduling issues. She assured Zelensky during their call that New Zealand would continue to support Ukraine through sanctions on Russia and provide aid to Ukraine through the efforts. If you like this video and want to see more like it, then make sure to leave a like so we know what you think and can continue to bring you the kind of videos you want to see. Let us know if you think there was anything we missed or if you'd like to see someone else in particular in the future. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the material we've shown, or other videos like this. Check out the other videos on this channel for fascinating looks into historical figures like this. Until next time, this has been Neapolitan, and we'll see you around.